I still remember the chill that ran down my spine as my sister's voice echoed through the courtroom. "This Leech wants half?" Her words hung in the air like poison, followed by uncomfortable laughter from her friends in the gallery. I kept my eyes down, focusing on my weathered hands as they trembled slightly on the polished wooden table. 3 years ago, I never would have imagined being here. My sister Emma and I had once been inseparable. Growing up in our small Connecticut town, we'd shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. When our parents died in a car accident 10 years ago, we only had each other. We promised to always protect one another. "Your Honor," my attorney said, her voice steady and professional, "Ms. Richardson has provided documentation proving her substantial financial contribution to the family estate over the past decade." I finally looked up. The judge was studying me, his expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. Emma sat across the aisle, designer handbag on her lap, diamond earrings catching the fluorescent lights. She looked nothing like the sister who once made me hot chocolate when I couldn't sleep, who held my hand at our parents' funeral. She contributed nothing. Emma's voice cut through again. She's been living off our parents' legacy while I built my own life. Now she wants to swoop in and take what's rightfully mine. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. 10 years of silence, of keeping receipts, of honoring my word even when it hurt. 10 years of watching my sister transform from my best friend into someone I barely recognized. After our parents died, they left their house and a modest savings account to both of us. Emma, 3 years older and already working at a prestigious marketing firm, had immediately suggested selling the house. "We'll split everything 50-50, she'd promised. "But I'll handle the estate. You're too emotional right now, Olivia." I'd trusted her completely. I was only 22, finishing my nursing degree, overwhelmed with grief and responsibility. Emma had always been the practical one, the decisive one. So I signed the papers she put in front of me, agreeing to let her manage our inheritance while I focused on graduating. "Ms. Richardson," the judge addressed me directly, "could you please explain to the court why you believe you're entitled to half of the estate proceeds?" I felt all eyes on me as I cleared my throat. "Your Honor, when our parents died, we agreed to sell the family home and split the proceeds. I signed over temporary management rights to my sister while I finished nursing school." My voice grew steadier as I continued. What I didn't know was that she never sold the house. Instead, she rented it out for the past decade, collecting approximately $2,500 monthly. She also emptied our parents' savings account of $120,000, which was meant to be divided between us. Emma scoffed loudly. "That's ridiculous. I've been managing the property, paying taxes, handling repairs. She's been completely uninvolved, living her own life in another state. Now she smells money and comes running back." The courtroom felt suffocating. I could feel the judgment from Emma's friends, the whispers, the sidelong glances. I was the villain in her story, the greedy sister, the family leech, but they didn't know the whole truth. They didn't know about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering how my own sister could betray me so completely. "Your Honor," my attorney continued, "we have evidence that Ms. Richardson has been sending money to maintain the property, monthly transfers of $800 for the past 9 years, totaling over $86,000, labeled House Maintenance Fund. She believed this money was supplementing rental income to maintain the property until they jointly decided to sell." I watched as the judge looked through the documents, his brow furrowed. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat. This was the moment I dreaded and waited for, the unraveling of a decade-long deception. Furthermore, my attorney added, Ms. Richardson continued working as a nurse during the COVID pandemic, even taking extra shifts to ensure this financial support continued, despite her sister's assurances that the house would eventually be sold and proceeds split. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Emma's attorney whispered something urgently in her ear, but she brushed him off with an irritated gesture. "She's lying." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "Those payments were for something else. A loan I gave her years ago." The judge looked up sharply. "Do you have documentation of this loan, Ms. Bennett?" Emma's confidence faltered visibly. Not with me today." I remembered the day I discovered the truth. It had been entirely accidental. A property tax notice mistakenly sent to my new address instead of Emma's. Opening it, expecting it to be some administrative error, I'd been shocked to see our family home still listed, with Emma as the sole owner. The property I believed had been sold years ago. My first instinct had been denial. There must be some explanation, some misunderstanding. I'd called Emma immediately, my voice shaking as I asked about the house. "Oh, that," she'd said, with casual dismissiveness. "The market was terrible when Mom and Dad died. I decided to hold on to it until prices improved. It's been a real headache, honestly." "But the rental income? The savings account? We agreed to split everything." A long pause had followed. "Olivia, don't be naive. I've been managing everything while you've been off playing nurse. Do you have any idea how much work that entails? The savings went to repairs and taxes. There's barely anything left." I'd felt physically ill, remembering the $800 I transferred to her each month, money I thought was helping maintain our shared inheritance, money I'd worked night shifts to provide, even during the darkest days of the pandemic. "Your Honor," my attorney's voice brought me back to the present. "We have bank statements showing the rental income Ms. Bennett has collected over the past 10 years, totaling approximately $300,000. None of this was ever shared with my client, despite their agreement." Emma's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, even if these allegations are true, my client has been solely responsible for managing the property. She's entitled to compensation for her time and effort. Ms. Richardson abandoned any meaningful connection to the estate years ago." The judge raised his hand, silencing further argument. "I've reviewed the documentation provided by both parties. This court will take a 15-minute recess while I consider the evidence." As everyone stood, Emma caught my eye across the courtroom. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not remorse exactly, but perhaps recognition. Recognition that the quiet sister she'd underestimated had finally found her voice. In the hallway, I stood alone by a window, watching rain begin to fall outside. 10 years of trust broken. 10 years of being called the emotional one, the impractical one, the one who needed guidance and protection. 10 years of being dismissed and deceived by the person I'd loved most in the world. "You know she's going to hate you forever for this," said a voice behind me. I turned to see Emma's husband, Mark, whom I'd only met twice before. He had a strange expression, part sympathy, part curiosity. "She already does," I replied quietly. "But this isn't about hate. It's about honesty." Mark shook his head. "Emma's always been determined. When she wants something, she finds a way to get it." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, I didn't know the full story about the house. She told me it was entirely hers. I wasn't surprised. Emma had always been skilled at crafting narratives that suited her purposes." Before I could respond, we were called back into the courtroom. As I took my seat, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I'd stood up for myself. I'd broken the pattern of silence and acquiescence that had defined our relationship for too long. The judge entered, his face solemn. "After reviewing the evidence presented today, this court finds that there was indeed an agreement between the sisters to equally share their parents' estate, including proceeds from the family home and savings." Emma sat up straighter, her knuckles white as she gripped her designer purse. "Ms. Bennett," the judge continued, turning to my sister, "your actions demonstrate a clear pattern of deception and financial mismanagement of shared assets. You had a fiduciary responsibility to your sister that you failed to uphold. The courtroom remained silent as he continued. Therefore, this court orders the immediate sale of the property in question, with 70% of proceeds going to Ms. Richardson and 30% to Ms. Bennett. A gasp escaped Emma's lips. 70%? That's outrageous. The judge's gaze hardened. Additionally, Ms. Bennett is ordered to repay $60,000 to Ms. Richardson, representing half of the parent's savings account that was wrongfully appropriated. The court also recognizes the $86,000 in maintenance payments made by Ms. Richardson, which will be credited toward her share. I sat perfectly still, barely breathing. This was more than I'd expected, more than I'd even asked for. This leech wants half. Emma's earlier words echoed in my mind. I hadn't wanted revenge. I just wanted what was rightfully mine, what our parents had intended for both of us to share. Your Honor, this is completely unfair. Emma's voice rang out, shrill with indignation. Her attorney placed a restraining hand on her arm, which she immediately shook off. I've been the one handling everything for a decade while she was off living her life. The judge's expression remained impassive. Ms. Bennett, the documentation clearly shows that your sister continued to contribute financially while believing the property would eventually be sold and proceeds shared. Your characterization of her as uninvolved is contradicted by the evidence. Emma's face flushed crimson. I could see the familiar signs of her temper rising, the tightening of her jaw, the slight flare of her nostrils. As children, that look had always signaled me to retreat, to apologize, to smooth things over regardless of who was actually at fault. Furthermore, the judge continued, shuffling through papers, text messages submitted to the court show Ms. Bennett repeatedly assuring her sister that the property would be sold when the time is right, and that she was safeguarding their shared inheritance. These communications establish a clear pattern of deliberate misrepresentation. My attorney squeezed my hand gently under the table, a small gesture of reassurance. I hadn't wanted to submit those private messages, those fragments of sisterly conversations that now felt like evidence of betrayal, but she had insisted they were crucial to establishing the true nature of our arrangement. The court orders these matters to be resolved within 90 days, the judge concluded, reaching for his gavel. The property shall be listed for sale within 2 weeks, with both parties agreeing on a reputable real estate agent. If agreement cannot be reached, the court will appoint one. The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, finalizing the judgment. It felt surreal, like watching a movie of someone else's life unfolding. For so many years I had avoided confrontation, had trusted that my sister would eventually do the right thing. Now a stranger in a black robe had done what I couldn't bring myself to do, hold Emma accountable. As people began to rise and the low murmur of conversation filled the room, Emma stormed toward me, brushing past her attorney's attempt to stop her. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, leaning close. Her expensive perfume, something floral and sophisticated, washed over me. "You've destroyed our relationship over money. Mom and Dad would be so disappointed in you." Or the mention of our parents sent a sharp pain through my chest. Would they be disappointed in me, or would they be heartbroken to see what had become of the close-knit family they'd raised with such care? "This was never about money, Emma," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "It was about honesty, about keeping your word." She gave a derisive laugh. "Oh, spare me the sanctimonious speech. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Saint Olivia, the selfless nurse, the keeper of promises." Her words stung, but no longer held the power they once did. I never claimed to be perfect. I just expected my sister to treat me with the same respect I showed her. "Respect?" Emma's voice rose, drawing glances from people nearby. "Was it respectful to drag me to court, to humiliate me publicly?" "I tried to resolve this privately," I reminded her. "I called you dozens of times over the past 3 months. I sent emails, texts. You refused to discuss it. But because there was nothing to discuss. She threw her hands up in exasperation. You signed the management over to me. What did you think would happen? I thought my sister would honor our agreement, I said simply. I thought blood would mean something to you. Emma's expression hardened. Blood? Is that your argument? That we share DNA, so I owe you half of everything? I've worked my entire life to get where I am. Nothing was handed to me. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. Nothing handed to her except our parents' entire savings account and a house she'd been collecting rent on for a decade. Ms. Bennett, my attorney interjected smoothly, stepping between us. I suggest you direct any further communications through your legal representation. This conversation isn't productive for either party. Emma glared at her before turning back to me. This isn't over, Olivia. You have no idea what you've done. With that, she turned on her heel and marched away, her husband following with an apologetic glance over his shoulder. As the courtroom emptied, I remained seated, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the hearing was evaporating, leaving behind a profound weariness. I had won, at least in legal terms, but it felt hollow. You did the right thing, my attorney said, packing documents into her briefcase. Family disputes are always difficult, but you stood up for yourself when it mattered. Had I? 10 years of silence, of giving Emma the benefit of the doubt, of sending money I sometimes couldn't afford while working brutal hospital shifts. Had I really stood up for myself, or had I just reached the breaking point where there was nothing left to do? Outside the courthouse, rain continued to fall, turning the world grey and indistinct. I pulled my coat tighter around me, watching Emma and her entourage climb into a luxury SUV across the street. When had my sister become a stranger? When had money and status become more important than the bond we'd once shared? My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, my best friend and fellow nurse. How did it go? Do I need to bring wine or celebration cake? I smiled faintly, grateful for the reminder that not all relationships were conditional. Both, I typed back. It's over. Judge ruled in my favor. Details when I see you. As I walked to my car, a reliable but aging Honda that had seen me through nursing school and countless hospital shifts, I thought about what came next. The money would be helpful, certainly. I could finally pay off my student loans, maybe even put a down payment on a small house of my own. But the cost had been so high. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal documents, realtor meetings, and tense exchanges conducted primarily through attorneys. True to the judge's order, the family home was listed for sale, photographed and described in glowing terms that made it sound like a warm, happy place. Looking at the listing online, I barely recognized the house from my childhood. Emma had renovated extensively, erasing much of what had made it our parents' home. I drove past it once, parking across the street and staring at the familiar yet different structure. The oak tree we'd hung a swing from was gone. The bright blue front door our mother had loved had been replaced with something sleeker, more modern. Even the garden had been transformed into a low-maintenance landscape of ornamental grasses and stone. A young couple emerged from the front door, accompanied by a realtor. They looked excited, pointing at features of the house, already imagining their life there. I wondered if they could feel any trace of the love and loss those walls had witnessed. Probably not. Houses don't hold memories. People do. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Olivia? A man's voice, vaguely familiar. It's Mark, Emma's husband. I straightened in my seat. Mark? Is something wrong? He sighed heavily. I think we need to talk, not over the phone. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? The request was so unexpected that I found myself agreeing before I could consider the implications. Sure. Where? There's a place called Riverdale Cafe on Elm Street. Noon. I'll be there, I said, curiosity overriding caution. The next day, I arrived at the cafe early, selecting a table in the corner where we could speak privately. I hadn't told anyone about this meeting, not even Maya. Something about Mark's tone had suggested discretion was important. He arrived precisely at noon, looking harried and uncomfortable in business casual attire. After ordering coffee, he sat across from me, fidgeting with a sugar packet. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, not quite meeting my eyes. "Emma doesn't know I'm here." "I assumed as much," I replied. "What's this about, Mark?" He took a deep breath. "There's something you should know. Something that might explain, not excuse, but explain, why Emma has been so—" He searched for the right word. "Protective of the estate." I waited, watching him struggle with whatever revelation he'd come to share. "Emma's company has been under financial investigation for the past year," he finally said, voice lowered. "She's the CFO, and there are discrepancies in the accounting, significant ones." This wasn't at all what I'd expected. "Are you saying she's in legal trouble?" He nodded grimly. "Potentially criminal charges. The investigation is ongoing, but it doesn't look good. The rental income from your parents' house has been helping us stay afloat while this plays out." I sat back, processing this information. So the money she took from our inheritance, from me, was to cover financial problems from her job. "Partially," Mark admitted, "and partially to maintain the lifestyle she believes is essential to her professional image. The house in Westport, the car, the right clothes." He looked genuinely distressed. "I've told her we should scale back, be more transparent, but Emma has always believed in projecting success at all costs." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He met my eyes directly for the first time. "Because I think you deserve to know that this wasn't just about greed or not caring about you. Emma's been drowning, making one bad decision after another, digging herself deeper." "That doesn't justify stealing from me for 10 years, I pointed out, though my anger was now tinged with confusion and, despite myself, concern. "No, it doesn't," he agreed quickly. "What she did was wrong. I thought knowing the context might help somehow. With healing, maybe." I stirred my untouched coffee, watching the liquid swirl into a tiny whirlpool. "Does she know about this meeting?" Mark shook his head. "She'd be furious. But things between us aren't good right now. I can't keep pretending everything she does is justified." We sat in silence for a moment, two people connected only by someone who wasn't present. "There's more," Mark said finally. "The house received an offer yesterday, full asking price, cash. Emma's going to accept it. This was good news, objectively speaking. A quick sale meant a faster resolution, access to the funds the court had awarded me. Yet I felt strangely hollow at the thought of strangers owning the last physical connection to my parents. "Thank you for telling me," I said, "both about the house and the other situation." Mark nodded, pushing his chair back. "I should go. I've got a client meeting in 30 minutes. He hesitated. "For what it's worth, Olivia, I think you did the right thing taking this to court. Sometimes people need to be forced to face consequences before they can change." After he left, I remained at the cafe, trying to reconcile this new information with everything I thought I knew about my sister. Emma, the confident, successful businesswoman, had been hiding serious professional troubles. The betrayal I'd experienced wasn't just about me. It was part of a larger pattern of deception that had engulfed her entire life. Did this change anything? The facts remained the same. She had taken what wasn't entirely hers, had lied to me repeatedly, had treated me with contempt when confronted, and yet there was something almost tragic in the image of Emma desperately trying to maintain her carefully constructed facade while everything crumbled beneath the surface. That evening, alone in my apartment, I found myself looking through old photos. Emma and me building sandcastles at the beach, dressed in matching outfits for Easter, huddled together on the couch during a thunderstorm. The sister in those images bore little resemblance to the woman who had sneered at me in court, who had called me a leech for wanting my fair share. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. House sold, closing in 3 weeks. Emma, presumably from a new number since I'd blocked her previous one. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond, or whether to respond at all. Finally, I typed, "Thank you for letting me know." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. After what seemed like an eternity, her reply came through, "We should talk before then, in person. There are things you don't understand." Was this an olive branch or another manipulation? After my conversation with Mark, I couldn't be certain of anything anymore. When and where? I responded against my better judgment. Sunday, the house, one last time before it's gone. I pictured the empty rooms, stripped of furniture and memories, awaiting new occupants. One last visit to say goodbye, not just to the house, but perhaps to the relationship that had once been the most important in my life. "I'll be there," I texted back. Noon. That night, I dreamed of our parents, not as they were at the end, but in their prime, laughing and vibrant. In the dream, they watched Emma and me from a distance, their expressions unreadable. I woke with tears on my face and a strange sense of both grief and resolution. Whatever happened Sunday, it would be the end of something and perhaps the beginning of something else. Sunday arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if even the weather was acknowledging this final chapter. I parked in front of our childhood home at exactly noon, noticing Emma's sleek black Audi already in the driveway. For a moment, I sat in my car, gathering courage. The house looked different in the daylight, less a repository of memories, more a valuable piece of real estate about to change hands. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the familiar path to the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Emma stood there, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking strangely vulnerable without her usual armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup. "You came," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. "I said I would." I followed her inside, immediately struck by how empty the house felt. Most of the furniture was gone, leaving behind only the bare essentials and rectangular patches of unfaded paint where pictures had once hung. "The movers came yesterday," Emma explained, noticing my gaze. "Most of it's in storage until—" She trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. We moved through the house in awkward silence, 2 strangers connected by blood and shared history, now separated by years of resentment and betrayal. In the kitchen, once the heart of our family home, where our mother had taught us both to bake cookies and our father had read the Sunday paper at the breakfast table, Emma finally spoke. "I wanted to show you something." She gestured toward the back door. In the garden. Curious, despite myself, I followed her outside. The carefully landscaped yard was still there, but at the far end, where a plain wooden fence had once stood, there was now an elaborate rose garden surrounding a small stone bench. "I planted these 5 years ago," Emma said quietly. "They're Mom's favorites, the yellow ones she always loved." I stared at the roses, feeling something catch in my throat. Our mother had indeed loved yellow roses, had always said they were like little pieces of sunshine. I'd had no idea Emma had remembered that, let alone created this tribute. "It's beautiful," I admitted, momentarily disarmed. "I come out here sometimes just to sit, to remember." Emma's voice held none of the sharp edges I'd grown accustomed to. "I never told you because we stopped really talking. About the important things, anyway. I sat on the stone bench, tracing the smooth surface with my fingers. Why did that happen, Emma? When did we become... I gestured vaguely between us. She remained standing, arms crossed protectively over her chest. I don't know. Gradually, I guess. After Mom and Dad died, everything changed. That doesn't explain why you lied to me about the house, about the money. Emma's posture stiffened. Mark told you about the company, didn't he? About the investigation? Yes, she laughed bitterly. Of course he did. My own husband can't even stay loyal. He thought it might help me understand. Understand what? That I'm not just a thief, but a desperate one. Emma paced the small garden, agitation evident in every movement. Do you have any idea what it's like, Olivia? To build something your whole life only to watch it crumble? To know that one mistake, one series of bad decisions could cost you everything? I watched my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Beneath the anger and entitlement was pure, unadulterated fear. You could have told me, I said softly, about any of it. The house, the money, the investigation. I would have tried to help. Help? Emma stopped pacing to stare at me incredulously. How? By offering me your nurse's salary while the SEC dismantles my entire life. The condescension in her voice rekindled my anger. I don't know, Emma. Maybe by being your sister, by supporting you emotionally, by not having to face your problems alone. I'm not alone. I have Mark. The same Mark you just accused of disloyalty. I shook my head. And how's that working out? Lying to everyone around you, pretending everything's fine while you're drowning. Emma's face flushed. Don't psychoanalyze me. You have no idea what my life is like. Because you never let me in. My voice rose, despite my efforts to remain calm. Even before the inheritance issues, you kept me at a distance. Christmas cards, occasional texts, that's it. Why? What did I ever do except love you and look up to you my entire life? Something in my words seemed to pierce her defenses. Emma sank onto the bench beside me, suddenly looking exhausted. It wasn't about you, Liv. It was never about you. The childhood nickname, unused for years, hit me like a physical blow. Then what was it about? She stared at the roses, silent for so long I thought she might not answer. Fear, she finally said, so quietly I almost didn't hear. I was terrified of failing, of not being enough. Mom and Dad always said I was the responsible one, the one they could count on. After they died, I felt this pressure to succeed, to prove them right. They loved us both, I reminded her. They never wanted us to compete. I know that. Rationally, I know that. Emma ran a hand through her hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. But I needed to be perfect. And when the company started having problems, when some questionable accounting decisions I'd approved came to light, I panicked. The house, the rental income, it was a safety net, a backup plan. That doesn't explain why you cut me out completely. That money was mine too, Emma. Our parents wanted us both to have it, because I was ashamed, her voice cracked. I couldn't admit to you, perfect, honest Olivia, that I was failing, that I might go to prison for financial fraud, that all my success was built on quicksand. I stared at her, stunned by the raw admission. You thought I would judge you. Wouldn't you have? The sister who saves lives every day versus the sister who might have committed a felony. Who would win that comparison? The irony of her perspective wasn't lost on me. All these years I'd been measuring myself against her. Her success, her confidence, her seemingly perfect life, never imagining she might be doing the same in reverse. I never wanted to compete with you, Emma. I just wanted to be your sister. She looked away, blinking rapidly. Well, it's too late now, isn't it? The court has ruled. You get 70% of everything and I... She laughed shakily. I might not even be able to keep what's left if the SEC investigation goes badly. Seeing her vulnerability, I felt my anger giving way to something more complicated. A mixture of residual hurt, tentative compassion, and profound sadness for what we'd lost. Mark mentioned the house sold quickly, I said, changing the subject slightly. Emma nodded. Family with 3 kids, they love the school district. The wife cried when they saw the rose garden. Are you keeping it? The roses, I mean. No, they're part of the property. Her voice softened. But I took cuttings. I'm going to try to grow new ones wherever I end up. The simple statement contained more genuine emotion than anything else she'd said. For the first time, I could see glimpses of my sister beneath the facade. The real Emma, not the polished professional or the defensive adversary. Why did you want to meet today? I asked. Really? She took a deep breath. To explain, I guess. To try to make you understand that it wasn't just about greed. And to give you this. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, placing it on the bench between us. I recognized it immediately. Our mother's jewelry box. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find the pearl necklace our father had given our mother on their 25th anniversary. The necklace Emma had always coveted, that our mother had promised would someday be hers. Emma, I can't. Yes, you can. Her voice was firm. Mom would want you to have it, especially after everything I've done. I closed the box gently. This feels like goodbye, isn't it? Emma stood, moving back toward the house. The closing is in 3 weeks. After that, we'll have no reason to communicate except through attorneys. I followed her inside, feeling the weight of finality in every step. In the empty living room, sunlight streamed through windows that needed cleaning, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. It doesn't have to be that way, I said carefully. Whatever happens with the house, the money, even your legal troubles, we're still sisters. Emma turned to face me, her expression skeptical. After everything that's happened, after what I called you in court, I'm not saying it would be easy, or that I'm not still hurt and angry, but I struggled to articulate the complicated tangle of emotions. But you're the only family I have left, and despite everything, that still means something to me. Even if I go to prison, her attempt at humor fell flat, undermined by the genuine fear in her eyes. Even then, I assured her, though I hope it doesn't come to that. We stood in uncomfortable silence, the weight of a decade of misunderstandings and betrayals hanging between us. There was no easy resolution, no cinematic moment of forgiveness and reconciliation. Just 2 damaged people trying to navigate the ruins of a relationship that had once been the cornerstone of both our lives. I should go, I finally said. I have a shift tonight. Emma nodded, following me to the door. For what it's worth, Olivia, I am sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did. For betraying your trust. It wasn't enough. Couldn't possibly be enough to erase years of deception, but it was something, a starting point, perhaps. I know, I said simply. At the door, I turned back. Take care of yourself, Emma, and keep me posted. About the investigation, I mean. She looked surprised, then gave a small nod. I will. Driving away from the house for what might be the last time, I felt lighter somehow. Not healed, that would take far more time if it was possible at all, but unburdened of some of the anger I'd been carrying. The pearl sat in my bag, a tangible reminder of all we'd shared and all we'd lost. The following weeks passed in a blur of work and practical matters. The house closing proceeded smoothly, with both Emma and me signing the final papers in the presence of our respective attorneys. We exchanged only the most basic pleasantries, the tentative connection of our garden conversation seemingly forgotten in the clinical environment of the title company's office. My portion of the proceeds, significantly larger than I'd ever anticipated, was deposited directly into my account. Seeing the balance, I felt momentarily dizzy. It was more money than I'd ever had in my life, enough to completely change my circumstances if I chose. I could pay off my student loans, buy a comfortable home, maybe even cut back on my work hours. Yet the windfall brought with it a strange melancholy. This wasn't how our parents had intended their legacy to be divided. They'd wanted it to bring us together, not tear us apart. On a rainy Tuesday evening, as I was sorting through options for financial advisors Maya had recommended, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Olivia? It's me." Emma's voice sounded different, subdued, almost fragile. I set down my paperwork. "Is everything okay?" A hollow laugh. "No, not really. The SEC made their decision. They're pressing charges, securities fraud, falsifying financial records. It's bad, Liv. Really bad." My heart sank. Despite everything, I'd hoped somehow she'd escape the worst consequences. "What does your lawyer say?" "That I should consider a plea deal, less jail time, but still jail time." Her voice cracked. "I don't know if I can do this. Mark's talking about divorce. My friends have all disappeared. I've lost everything." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her despair through the phone. "Not everything, Emma. Not yet." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you still have options. Good legal representation for one. And..." I hesitated, knowing what I was about to say might be foolish, might be walking right back into another betrayal. "And you still have me, if you want." Silence on the other end. So long I wondered if the call had dropped. Then, very quietly, "Why would you even offer that, after what I did to you?" It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself repeatedly over the past weeks. "Because I meant what I said at the house. You're my only family, and family doesn't abandon each other when things get hard. Even when that family member has been incredibly selfish, even when she called you a leech in open court." "Even then," I confirmed. "Look, I'm not saying I'm ready to fully trust you again or that everything's forgiven, but I'm willing to be here to help however I can." Another long pause. "I don't deserve that." "Probably not," I agreed. "But that's the thing about family, Emma. Sometimes we get more than we deserve, sometimes less. But we're stuck with each other either way." A sound that might have been a laugh or a sob came through the line. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now. Just keep me updated, okay? Let me know if there's anything I can do." After we hung up, I sat on my couch, staring at the rain streaking down my apartment windows. The conversation had left me emotionally drained, but also strangely hopeful. Not for an immediate reconciliation, we were far from that, but for the possibility that someday, somehow, we might find our way back to being sisters in more than just name. 3 days later, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a small potted plant, a yellow rose cutting, just beginning to take root. The note in Emma's familiar handwriting was simple. "Some things can grow again, even after being cut. E." I placed the tiny plant on my windowsill, touching one tender leaf gently. It was fragile, unlikely to survive without careful attention. Much like our relationship, damaged, tentative, requiring patience and care with no guarantee of success. But it was alive. And sometimes that's enough to start with. The following Sunday, as I was organizing my newly expanded finances, a text came through from Emma. "Meeting with prosecutors tomorrow. Scared out of my mind. I stared at my phone, feeling the emotional distance of the past decade, warring with the instinctive desire to support her. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, "Want company? I can take a personal day." 3 dots appeared immediately. "You would do that?" "If you want me there, yes." Another pause. "I do. Thank you." That night, I dreamed of our parents again. This time, they were smiling. The federal courthouse loomed against the clear blue sky as I waited for Emma, questioning my decision to come. What was my role here? Supportive sister? Witness to justice? I wasn't sure. "Olivia." I turned to see Emma approaching in a simple navy suit, her hair pulled back, face bare of makeup. Gone was the polished executive, replaced by someone who looked vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "You actually came," she said, sounding surprised. "I said I would." The echo of our exchange at the house wasn't lost on either of us. She gave a tight smile. "My attorney's meeting us inside. It's just a preliminary hearing, but—" She took a shaky breath. "I'm terrified." Without thinking, I squeezed her hand briefly, one step at a time. Inside, we met her attorney, Patricia, who greeted me with polite surprise before focusing on her client. As they discussed strategy, I sat quietly, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The charges were serious: securities fraud, falsifying financial documents, conspiracy. If convicted on all counts, Emma could face 15 years in prison. "The prosecution is offering a deal," Patricia explained. 5 years if you plead guilty to the primary charges. They'll drop the conspiracy count. Emma paled. 5 years. With good behavior, you could be out in 3. Given their evidence, it's actually quite generous. And if I go to trial, we're looking at a much longer sentence if convicted, and based on what I've seen, conviction is likely. I watched my sister's hands tremble as she placed them flat on the table to steady herself. "Could I have a moment alone with my sister?" Emma asked suddenly. When Patricia left, Emma's composure cracked. "I can't do this, Liv. I can't go to prison." Her breathing grew rapid, bordering on hyperventilation. I moved to sit beside her, recognizing a panic attack. "Emma, look at me. Breathe with me, okay? In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. She followed my lead, her grip painfully tight. "I'm sorry. I thought I could handle this like everything else." "You don't have to be strong all the time," I told her. "No one can be." Emma laughed bitterly. "Look at me, falling apart completely. Some powerful executive I turned out to be." I studied her face, seeing echoes of the little girl who taught me to tie my shoes. "What you did wasn't okay. You do deserve consequences, but that doesn't mean I want to see you suffer." "Why?" Her eyes searched mine. "After everything, why do you still care at all?" "Because you're my sister," I said simply. "And I think somewhere under all this is the Emma I grew up with." She wiped away tears. "I don't deserve your support." "Maybe not, but you have it anyway." After the hearing, where Emma formally acknowledged the plea deal offer and was given 2 weeks to decide, we walked silently to a nearby park. "What will you do?" I finally asked. She stared at the ground. "Take the deal, I guess. Patricia says fighting would be worse." She looked up at me. "What would you do if you were me?" "I'm not you, Emma. But you've always been the honest one, the one with integrity." I shook my head. "I'm not perfect. I've just been lucky enough not to have my mistakes magnified like this." "Lucky," she repeated. "Yes, I suppose that's part of it. One different choice at one crucial moment and everything changes." We sat on a bench, watching strangers pass by, each absorbed in their own lives and problems. "I've been thinking about what to do with my share from the house," I said after a while. Emma tensed. "It's your money. You don't need my approval." "I know, but I wanted to tell you anyway." I took a deep breath. "I'm setting up a trust. Half for me, half for you, to be managed by a neutral third party. She stared at me. What? Why would you? Because whatever mistakes you've made, whatever happens with the trial, you'll need a fresh start someday, and I want you to have that chance. Emma's eyes filled with tears. After everything I did to you? After I tried to take what was rightfully yours? Yes, I said simply. Because that's what family does. Not steal from each other, but help each other rebuild when things fall apart. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't think I would have done the same for you. I know. The acknowledgement hurt, but it was honest. But maybe that's the difference between us, and maybe that's okay. 3 months later, I sat in another courtroom, watching as Emma formally accepted her plea deal. 5 years, with possibility of parole after 3 for good behavior. As the judge made it official, I saw her shoulders straighten, accepting her fate with a dignity I hadn't expected. Afterward, in the brief moment we were allowed to speak before they took her away, she hugged me fiercely. "Thank you for being here," she whispered, "for not giving up on me completely. Write to me," I said, "and when you get out, we'll figure out the next chapter, together." 2 years passed. Emma's letters came regularly, hesitant at first, then increasingly open. She was taking business ethics courses in prison, counseling other women on financial literacy, finding purpose in her punishment. And I was building my life too. I'd used my portion of the inheritance to buy a small house and reduce my nursing hours, allowing me to volunteer at a community clinic. The work was deeply satisfying, healing something in me that had been broken long before the court case. On a warm spring day, I received a letter different from the others. The handwriting on the envelope was the same, but inside was just a single page. "Parole hearing next month. They say I have a good chance. I've been thinking a lot about that day in court when I called you a leech, about how wrong I was. The judge saw what I couldn't. Your honesty, your integrity, your heart. He was right to give you everything, Liv. You deserved it all along. But what I'm most grateful for is that you chose to share it anyway. Not because you had to, but because of who you are. If they let me out, I want to try to deserve that kindness. Your sister, if you'll still have me. Emma." I sat on my porch holding the letter, feeling something shift and settle within me. The pain wasn't gone, might never be completely gone, but alongside it was hope. Hope that sometimes what breaks can be mended. Not perfectly, not without scars, but perhaps stronger at the wounded places. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. There were arrangements to make, a room to prepare. My sister was coming home, and this time we'd try to get it right. The judge had given me everything that day in court, but the real victory wasn't in the money or property. It was in finding the strength to set boundaries, to demand respect, and still leave the door open for reconciliation. To understand that justice and compassion aren't opposing forces, but complementary ones. "This leech wants half," Emma had sneered that day in court. But what I'd really wanted wasn't half of anything material. It was wholeness.